I'm Barbara Nesbitt, the Assistant Superintendent for Technology Services in the School District of Pickens County, which is in upstate South Carolina.
Well, excellent. And tell us a little about the district. How many students, how many faculty, teachers?
Right, so we have 16,500 students in grades, actually 3K through 12th grade, including special needs, about 1,150 teachers, another 200 administrators, both at school and district level operations and altogether about 2,000 staff.
Excellent. Well, obviously, given everything that we're seeing today, distance learning has been a pretty critical piece. What's some advice that you'd be giving to schools and districts that are looking to support distance learning? How should they be thinking about their education technology infrastructure, devices, anything that you'd want to share?
I think the most important component of a solid digital learning program is a shared vision for what that should look like. And I think that starts with the school board, the superintendent, technology, the instructional department, as well as, the principals and the teachers. And so for us, that conversation started about 6 years ago as we, as a district, we're very heavily involved with IMS Learning Consortium. And so we met a lot of districts at that time. And George Perot was down in Orange County in Florida. And we saw with him ClassLink for the first time and kind of the ease of use of the single sign-on system. At the same time, we had just adopted SharePoint for our teacher web pages, and we had come off of a really good system that had been bought out by Blackboard, and it was not working for us. So at the same time that we started seeing what's everybody else doing around the country, we were looking for an LMS. And so we did go with ClassLink for a single sign-on, but we knew we needed something. It wasn't just about getting into different sites. We needed an LMS so teachers could actually build quality digital lessons. And so we began looking at different LMS solutions, just the different people that we knew around the country were using. And we had a whole RFP process that we went through with Schoology for a learning management system, involved teachers and administrators from all around the district. And of course we landed with Schoology, which was the right decision. And that very first year, we had pretty strong usage at our secondary level. And then over time, I'd say over a 3-year period, it has just become the go-to tool for digital instruction. So I think it really started with a vision of wanting a digital interoperable ecosystem. We got all of our textbooks and moved to digital textbooks where we had single sign-on and the one roster process worked, so that we took all of the lift of managing digital resources off of our teachers and managed that for them. And and this is why I go back to shared vision. Our philosophy is to trust our teachers. So we have a scope and sequence of, about how long you should be spending on different units and what those standards are in the units. But we trust our teachers with how to deliver that instruction based on their kids. And so we want our teachers to have the best tools at their fingertips, but we don't tell them how to use it. And so we love in Schoology, the teachers get to do their own builds. So I think first and foremost, that's important. And then investing in professional development around the tools that you have, what I'd say is probably the next thing that's really important. And just what does it mean, not only how to use the tools on a technical level, but what does it mean to personalize or to use them in a small group instruction setting? And so we have hired 4 instructional coaches that we use in our district that go around and help teachers really when it comes to knowing how to build and how to teach and how to use digital resources, which for us has been primarily in the classroom and live instruction with either whole group or small group or individual, but has now moved out to be more distance learning.
Well, excellent. And it's quite an infrastructure you have set up there. So that is great. Now, obviously, as you think about that over time, I'm curious, how do you look at the data to help drive some of the district-wide decisions? You talked a little bit about how things are structured and different levels of autonomy that people have, but is specific data or the things that you're looking at to understand if there are opportunities to course correct or do something different?
Oh, I think that looking at it from an analytical point of view has been important from the beginning. One of the first things that we did as we were developing kind of our vision and starting to do teacher training is we did an inventory of all of our digital resources, which was quite time consuming and extensive. And you realize that you've got hundreds of resources, and that's where we moved over time for everything to be managed through single sign-on through ClassLink, and that everything could also be accessed through Schoology, so that if teachers chose to go directly to a textbook publisher's website, they could, or if they wanted to do a specific build inside of Schoology to that resource, they could do that as well. And so over a period of time, and every year we update all of our resources and the data flow between them, we are able to see which resources do we not yet have working in a way that's easy for teachers to use and to manage. So that's one piece of data that we look at. We also work in conjunction with our instructional team, and we've developed a rubric for analyzing digital textbooks and analyzing digital web applications, so that we're looking at issues such as privacy and ease of use and quality of instruction, but also single sign-on and it being integrated with Schoology, and being able to get information back inside of Schoology as well, which with LTI we're able to do now with many of our applications, so that teachers can use the information in assessment. So I'd say that's another piece of data, is making sure that the resources that we do select, have data that teachers can use to make decisions. And then we look to see every year which resources are being used. So we can run reports in Schoology, we can run reports in ClassLink, and we are able to see, what's our usage and where do we still need to address some weaknesses.
Excellent. And I'm curious. You talked a lot about IMS Global and the importance of interoperability, and I've heard that kind of weave through the narrative a few times about the importance of that with respect to the content that people are
Yes.
using. Do you make that a part of the procurement process? I'm curious, if I'm a new district that doesn't necessarily know what LTI is or Common Cartridge, I've heard about IMS. How are you setting things up so that they're future-proofed? Is that part of the procurement, or is that something that people are doing along the side? Anything you could share would be helpful.
As we're looking to procure software or digital textbooks, a web application, and an assessment system, one of the components of our rubric as we're assessing the software is its compliance with the IMS standards, and particularly one roster, the Common Cartridge, and then LTI. We want to make sure that we're able to manage rostering for our teachers. If we can save 10 minutes of a teacher's time on administrative tasks every day, we've given back a week of planning every year. And we also want to make sure that it's single sign-on. And the LTI inside of Schoology is really important to us, because our teachers have been using interoperable platforms for a number of years. So they're accustomed, as they're building something inside of Schoology, to being able to go out to the exact PDF, the exact video, the exact resource, inside of another web application like a digital textbook or BrainPop, for example. Pulling that into Schoology and possibly even asking questions about it, or building a discussion board around another resource. So it's important to our teachers that they are able to use the tools as they see fit, and that it's easy and seamless, and they're not having to worry about sending kids out to a website where they have to remember what the URL is or what the password is or what their login credentials are. So that's definitely a part of the procurement process. And I will say that when you're starting out as a new district, that usually that's one or two people's vision. But once you get more and more resources that are interoperable, that flow easily, when teachers see the beauty of being able to build a wonderful Schoology unit that has 10 different resources, including, a textbook and free resources, or a video from Safari Montage, or, a web application or an assessment, and it's all there in this unit, and the kids are just clicking and going from one thing to the next, and they're able to see actionable data on that, the teachers would demand it then. So, while at first it was me pushing this with our procurement and with instruction, now it's a no-brainer. I mean, we wouldn't buy anything that didn't have these features because our teachers have come to expect it.
And that's great. I mean, that's ideally where we want everything to be.
Mhm.
So it's great to hear that. So, you've talked a lot about content integration. We've talked about some of the single sign-on. I'm curious, with respect to Schoology and PowerSchool, right? The SAS is another critical piece in this. Yes, from a single sign-on perspective, but anything you can share around how the two being connected has impacted, the lives of our teachers on an everyday basis? Because I think that's one question that we get all the time. You were a partner of ours before we combined with PowerSchool, when Schoology was a standalone company. And you continue to be with us, and I expect we'll be working together for many, many, many years to come. And so, I just have a question around that part of, obviously now we're even better positioned to help give time back to teachers by making things a little bit more efficient, but we've always had some level of integration and it's always been strong. Anything you can share about how important is it, or is it not, when you think about the things that teachers are doing on a daily basis?
Well, whenever you are trying to build a digital ecosystem and move to a stronger use of digital curriculum and content, the source of truth for students is always the student information system. So their enrollment in special education programs, or gifted and talented, or their teacher in their classroom, the source of truth for that is the student information system. And so it's important that all of your content, including Schoology, is connected to the student information system so that the rostering and everything is accurate. And so we were really thrilled when PowerSchool bought Schoology, because we knew that integration would stay and probably get better. Not that, it had much to improve, but we were really pleased with that. And particularly, our teachers use the gradebook inside of Schoology, and so they're syncing that over to PowerSchool. So we look forward to an even more seamless integration to come. And so that, for us, the importance of connecting the day-to-day work that teachers are doing with their kids with digital resources, and being able to send that information back to a PowerSchool for grading and assessment purposes is really, really important. And then being able to get information from PowerSchool, even around things like at a district level, where we would be able to run analytics to see how special needs populations, or how are our boys doing, or how are kids with LD, disabilities, how are they functioning and performing. I think those are the kinds of things that will get better over time.
Absolutely. And maybe after this call, we could talk a little bit about that some more, because there's a lot of very exciting things that are happening. And
That's good.
what you just described is exactly around the vision, because being able to pull all these things together, again, to get a whole child perspective is a clear item for all of us. And so we're excited about it. To your point, being able to send grades back and forth is a big time saver. And so if there are other things that we can do in addition to that to help pull out insights and help improve outcomes for students, we're all about it. So that's great to hear. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but for our broader community, how has the teaching experience changed in the last 9 weeks? And what do you think it looks like going forward?
For us, because we had put an enormous amount of effort and attention onto the digital ecosystem and to the professional development components, and really our vision that it was not about technology or just going digital for the sake of going digital. For us, it was about moving to more personalized learning, to more choice for our students. We have developed a robust virtual program, virtual school for especially for middle school and high schoolers, where our students can choose the things they take in school and the things they might take outside of school, even things in the summer, so that if we have a student who, say, wants to take a semester sabbatical to go on a a learning trip or something with their parents, which we do have because we are home to Clemson University. And so we'll have kids who need to be out for a semester. We're able to provide for that. And so for us, because we had already invested in that, it was more an issue of training them in the live conferencing tool that we had just purchased, and how then they were to go about, like, you can't really do 90 minutes of instruction with high schoolers. That, if they were
Right.
doing 30 minutes of live instruction, and then they might be meeting with different groups. Many of them use Schoology and the groups, where they would create groups and they would be able to assign kids to different groups so that they were able to keep track of the work that they were doing inside of Schoology. And so for our teachers, I don't think it was quite the learning curve that it was for many other teachers. Like I said, we had only lost 3 days of instruction in between live face-to-face and going to more of our extended outage with our digital distance learning. And I think that's because our teachers were already so used to using all of the tools that we had, and they had things built inside of Schoology. So, obviously, you're going to have some teachers who probably performed at a higher level than others, and that's to be expected, which we hope to improve over time. But I do think that our teachers were still able to see and talk to our kids at least several times a week. And even though it wasn't face to face where you could see them, it's like this right here, where you're able to conference and just know they're okay. We had kids see chickens being born. They were hatching chicks before this happened, and so they were able to. Thankfully, the chicks hatched during the school day, and they were able to log in and kind of see that experience. We've had speech teachers still doing speech therapy, reading teachers doing reading instruction, small group math taking place. Guidance counselors have met with kids. We've had parent-teacher conferences. So it's different, and none of us like it, but it's better than doing paper packets.
Right.
So.
Now that makes sense. And, you've talked about how Schoology's helped with distance learning. How does that translate into blended learning if that becomes more the plan in the fall? Obviously there's a lot of similarities there, but do you see any differences in the way that people utilize the platform, or differences in terms of expectations from your perspective or others in administration?
I do. In fact, I think for teachers that this experience with COVID-19, as challenging as it's been, has been a really amazing opportunity for them to learn. And it's been an immersive real world professional learning experience for all of our teachers. And I think, if you look at Hall and Horton's work on organizational change, and you think of changing how teachers perform as like walking across an implementation bridge, we had teachers who are in different stages of that bridge, and COVID-19 kind of forced them to walk across it a little bit faster. And so some of the stories that we have heard, for example, we had a first grade teacher who said, "I'll never teach the same again. There's so many things that I realized I was doing that I could do better by better utilizing the tools that I have, like recording a lesson that I had spent 10 minutes on in a whole group and letting that be a station while kids are doing that in Schoology. I can be doing something else with another group of kids and better maximize the time that we have." So I think particularly for some of our teachers who weren't using the digital tools quite as well as we would have liked them to, I think this has forced them to see how they can change their instruction for the better in a blended learning environment, and probably doing a little less whole group and a whole lot more small group and individual work, and truly giving a more personalized instructional experience to the students, which is going to be critical as we look at trying to address some of the learning gaps that will have taken place over the last 2 months. So.
Excellent. And so, we've already covered some of this, but when you think about preparation for teaching and learning in 2020, 2021, beyond, what should districts be thinking about that they might not be doing today or that they might not have thought about?
My advice would be to have a real good analysis of their digital ecosystem to make sure that it's robust and solid, that, that they've given teachers training and their tools, experience, and time to develop curriculum. And what we saw is for all of our teachers that they moved from using the platform in a whole group instruction to starting to feel freer to break down and do things in more individuals and small group. And I really think that's going to be the future of education, is more choice for kids. We're going to be dealing with this pandemic, unfortunately, probably another year with some level of disruption, and being able to be flexible, to think about moving from whole, having everybody back again to possibly being out to maybe only having a few kids back at a time, and thinking how you're managing the others. You can't do that without technology. And for us, Schoology is just a center part of that. And so I think, just thinking about the tools that you have that you give to your teachers and to your students, and making sure that those tools are the right tools and that they are, manageable. I do think the single sign-on, I think the LTI, I think that flow is very important. But I also think the training of the teachers and how to change their pedagogy to be more centered on the student for personalized learning is critical.
That's a great point. It makes a lot of sense. So, one aspect that we haven't chatted as much about has been parents, and they're such a critical piece of the learning experience. And when we think about today, and now with children learning at home, probably even more so. So I guess from your perspective, what and how are you incorporating parents into the learning experience? How are you communicating with them, keeping them up to date? Any tips and advice you could share there?
Well, one of the things that we like the most about Schoology is that parents have their own login, and they can see all of their kids. So they can see everything that's due. They have the calendar features, and it's easy to communicate with our parents. There is no possible way that instruction could have continued over the last several months without the tremendous support of our parents. And so we have parents who have already been using Schoology to log in, not just to check kids' grades, but to know what work is due. And, while we don't, necessarily encourage being a helicopter parent, and to the last 2 months, we could never have done this without the tremendous support of our parents. So having a tool in place to be able to easily communicate with them, and for parents to see what's due, not just for one of their children, but if they happen to have 2, 3, 4 kids in our system, we've made it so easy for them. I hear stories from other parents in other districts, and they're dealing with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different learning platforms, and nothing's all together, and they don't know their kids' logins, or they don't know how to check behind it. And I think having a tool so that makes parents partners in an easy way is really important. And it was a key part of our decision to go with Schoology.
Great, and thank you for sharing. And again, it makes a ton of sense, especially given everything going on. So is it fair to characterize that ideally the state would just have Schoology for all districts? That would be ideal.
Yes. Well, I'm hopeful in South Carolina that, that might happen. So we'll see. And I get it. If you've already invested in learning and training in another platform, I understand the challenge. But I don't know how you do this instruction and on an any day, regular day basis, but especially now without enterprise solutions. We told our teachers one of those 3 days we were out to prepare for this, the very first thing we told them is no free accounts. You've got the tools. We have invested in the right tools. You need to use the tools we have, and don't go looking out for a solution where your kid's safety is compromised and you're creating accounts for young kids without parental permission. You don't know what's being collected. Just stick to what we already have. And we were fortunate that we had devices, we had training in place, we had the right tools. And so our teachers have really, really done well. And there's not a day that goes by that we don't hear from at least one parent who just says, thank you for making this easy for us as parents to do at home.
Oh, that's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously your whole team is doing an incredible job. Teachers, the staff, the parents, I'm going to include the students. I mean, everyone is all in this together, and they're doing great. When you talk about, that was an interesting point where you're encouraging people not to sign up, for free accounts, to look more toward enterprise environments. So if I'm a new district coming on, any experience or advice you can share about, what it was like coming on board with Schoology, syncing it with your SIS, that might be something that's helpful for some of the people who are viewing this.
For us, the integration component was fairly seamless, and our team was a fairly experienced team, so we had done this with a couple other platforms. So we found the integration time frame to be really easy. I think that I think it would probably be even easier because it's tied to the student information system with PowerSchool. But I can't really think back to any real hiccups that we had in getting things off the ground. And the platform is so easy and intuitive for teachers. So I think that it was a fairly easy training step as well for our parents and for our students to come on board.
Excellent. Well, great. Well, anything else you think our viewers should know about?
We haven't talked about the assessment component in Schoology, but one of the features that our teachers really appreciate is the amount of assessment tools that are available inside of Schoology. So it's not just true, false, ABC, but there's technology enhanced items, the integrations, like we've already said, with Google. Our teachers love being able to do a rubric on a Google writing, and that comes back in to the grade book inside of Schoology. So I think that taking a look at the assessments in Schoology as a huge time saver and giving teachers information about how their students are doing is critically important for any district who's looking, to make a decision about an LMS.
Well, that is excellent feedback, and probably a good place to wrap up. And I just want to say thank you so much, not only for taking the time to chat with us here today, but also for everything that you and every member of the community is doing to help support our students during this time.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? It's strange times, but it's a time I don't think any of us would ever have foreseen coming, and it's not one that we want. But we're certainly glad we have the tools to have made through, and we're proud of our folks.